Ashes of Creation is shutting down. The entire studio apparently laid off and leadership quitting in protest of the board's actions. So let's dive into this. I'm Josh, former CTO with 2 decades of experience in the software industry, and on this channel we go inside the secrets of the software industry. So this news has been circulating all over the internet over the past few days that Ashes of Creation is shutting down development, completely shuttering the studios. So I'm going to take a look at this article by MMORPG.com and kind of react to what they're saying here. Take a look at it from the business end of these things, what's going on behind the scenes when news like this comes out. So, to say that Ashes of Creation is in turmoil is likely putting it lightly, as developer Intrepid Studios seemingly imploded overnight on Saturday. So this is breaking news. This just happened this past weekend. Rumors and speculation are running rampant, while its former creative director has made a vague statement addressing the online chatter. As we've been working behind the scenes to corroborate much of what is swirling around the internet, it seems Sharif himself stepped out of the shadows to address, albeit vaguely, the speculation that is avalanching across Reddit. So it looks like Steven, he's the founder of Intrepid Studios, I think co-founder technically, came out to make a couple public statements on Discord, it looks like. So he said, I made a public statement. My next action will be a public filing. So this is interesting, and we'll get to this. So he's talking about there being a public filing involved. So something to do with ownership over the company, most likely, whether that be his role or selling the company, as we'll get to later, to a private equity firm. He says, my next action will be public filing. I hope at that point people have a better understanding of what happened. He goes on here to say, wait until there are more facts available before forming conclusions. The internet is not kind to patience. That's very true. But unfortunately, the legal process requires it. So clearly they're in the middle of something that involves lawyers, that involves legality, that involves corporate interests here. So he's trying to stay quiet because he's waiting for filings to become public, which he has to legally. Okay, so obviously there's a lot going on behind the scenes here, and Steven is trying to keep it quiet, or at least trying to give a little bit of insight while not breaching any kind of contract, right, which would get him in a lot of trouble. Steven, for those of you who don't know, like I said, he's the founder of Intrepid Studios, and he is he's what you call a very personality-forward leader. So he's very involved with the community. He's always out there making statements. You know, he's always out there interacting with the community, talking about things on Twitter, on Discord, wherever. He's very active. He's very outspoken with his personality. He's not quiet on his opinions. And on one hand, that can be a very great way to build a community, right? To build a game's or a company's community in general. On the other hand, that can also be a way that you kind of alienate some of your community, which he has in the past. There's been several YouTubers that he, for instance, got into kind of fights with online, very, very public ones. So, and then sometimes he'll make statements and he'll have to walk them back because, he kind of does these things off the cuff. He's very out there. He's very outspoken. That kind of leadership, it works really well for a lot of companies. Elon Musk is a great example of a very personality-forward leadership. Right? Again, it brings you a very dedicated cult following. Things like SpaceX, things like Tesla, things like Ashes of Creation. They get that really dedicated, really cult following, but they can also alienate a lot of people when you're very personality forward, when you're very outspoken about a lot of these things. So obviously, I don't think it's probably really, really difficult for Steven to keep quiet about what's going on, because I know he definitely wants to be out there making statements and talking about it. So this is what he was saying in that message we just read. What those filings could be remains to be seen. Sharif announced over the weekend that he and much of senior leadership team resigned their positions in protest to actions being taken by Intrepid's board, all while employees were seemingly finding out their roles were being terminated and the studio was closing shop. So referring to Intrepid's board here. So originally, Intrepid Studios was, I believe, they've been developing Ashes of Creations for close to, I think, 10 years, maybe more, close to 10 years now. And it's been in an alpha state for a lot of that. It's kind of the never-ending development game that a lot of the internet has been really, really looking forward to. They've promised a lot out of this thing. They've had a long development, a very expensive development that I think Steven himself has poured a lot of money into. and also very expensive alpha. They've been selling alpha access, selling early access things, selling bundles, all these things to support their development over the last decade, because development is not cheap. But also, I think probably turning a nice profit in the meantime, despite it being still in development. There's been a lot of money that went into this game. So when they say Intrepid's board and also these legal filings, it looks like they were, we'll get into this here. MMO YouTuber Kira TV has posted a video reporting on some information he's hearing from his own sources, including the claim that Intrepid Studios itself was sold to a private equity firm. He also brings up a basic timeline of events, stating that the plan was initially to downsize 70 people from 250, and then at last minute changed to a total studio layoff. So what he's saying here, and I'm pretty sure this has been corroborated a few times, including by MMORPG.com, over the past few days, but I've seen this information circulate a bit that Intrepid Studios did indeed sell to a private equity firm. And this is very interesting. It's very, very common in this space. Very interesting for Ashes of Creation, since, like I mentioned, they were bootstrapped, right? They were self-funded for a really long time. Ashes selling out to a private equity firm, that is a common exit strategy for small companies or startups, or small, even mid-sized companies in many ways. So what a private equity firm does is they're an investment company, effectively. They buy and sell small companies. They buy them when they're hopefully at a small enough that they think there's a lot of potential there, that they can reduce a lot of redundancies and increase their revenue, and then in a few years sell that same company, have it make more money and sell it for a profit. So they buy low and they sell high for companies. And that's what they were probably trying to do, because that's what private equity firms do, when they bought Intrepid Studios. They saw this company, Intrepid Studios, developing this product. They probably saw that it had a lot of wasted potential, a lot of redundancies, maybe too many staff if they were planning to cut down from 250 to 70, maybe different monetization strategies that Ashes wasn't taking advantage of. They saw this. They bought Ashes of Creation, assuming that they could either make it turn a profit or make it turn more of a profit, make it more efficient, improve that bottom line in a few years, and then resell it or do something else with it, most likely resell it. But clearly something went wrong, right? Because they got in there and then they ended up doing a total studio layoff. And that's not something they want to do, right? So you hear about something like private equity. It's like the evil corporation coming in and buying out the little guy and laying everyone off. Which, obviously that some of that is a little bit true, right? They came in here with possibly the plan to lay off a bunch of the employees. But really, the goal of a private equity company isn't just to destroy everything in its path. No, what they want to do is they help companies go from the startup, the founder phase, right? You've got a founder who knows a lot about what they built, right? The software they built, or the industry they're in, and they're real experts at that. They're not experts at growing a company, right? So they built this thing based on their industry knowledge, based on their expertise in software or whatever it is. They got it to a certain point, but they're not going to be able to get it to that next level, because that's not what they do. They're not business executives, right? So the PE firm comes in and that's what they do. They are really good at growing something that you started it, you got it so far, and they're going to take it to that next level. Right, so you sell, you get your buyout from the PE firm, you make your millions of dollars, and they take your company, and maybe they keep you on. Oftentimes, that's what happened to me in the past. They'll keep you on as a either board or as a consultant, or even as the acting CTO or whatever it is, depending on what you were doing at that company. They'll probably have you sign on for like a 2-year contract or whatever their term is that they're looking to turn this around for, and say, cool, we bought you out, right? You made your money from this, but we want to make sure you don't go anywhere because you know all about this company, right? We want you to be involved and continue to consult and help bring this to the next level right with us. So that's a lot of times what happens here. And it does look like, based on this information, Steven himself and probably the leadership team was not laid off, but they quit in protest of the other layoffs, or in protest. We'll see if that actually happened, but that's what it's being reported to happen, right? So it says, we can corroborate this account. We're hearing from our sources. All the exact numbers were initially to remain at the studio are unclear. The plan was initially to leave a skeleton crew intact to maintain the studio, but that changed within 24 hours to an entire company layoff. So that kind of makes sense. So 70 from 250 employees, that's a big cut. Obviously, their first plan here was to reduce excess costs, right? If they're going to make this company more profitable or more profitable, cutting a lot of employees, that's one of the biggest, easiest ways to do that. But you don't want to cut all of the employees, because if you lay off the entire studio, which is very, very drastic measure to take, you're giving up on development at that point, right? You don't have anyone who knows how your code works. You don't have anyone who knows how your systems and infrastructure work, how the company works at all. That's all out the window. Effectively, you're admitting that you have to strip this thing for parts at this point, right? That's it. That's the only thing you can do, because if you were to restart development at this point, you would have to bring on entirely new staff. You would have to onboard those staff, give them time to get familiar with the infrastructure and the systems and all the legacy stuff that's going on with Ashes of Creation. And that's going to take months and be a whole lot more expensive than just leaving this, what they were calling a skeleton crew, right? So that was probably the initial plan, was let's get rid of a lot of the employees here. We're going to downsize to, the senior engineers, the staff engineers, the executives, the people who know how the company runs, who know how the infrastructure works. And then we're going to either outsource a lot of this stuff, use companies that we've worked with in the past who, outsource resources and development resources and assets and all that kind of stuff, and try to reduce these redundancies and cut costs and do all that kind of thing. But why would they want to actually shut it down? What does that give them, right? They're not, like I mentioned, they're not just an evil company coming in here to destroy this on purpose. Something happened. So when a PE firm goes in to acquire a company, they do what's called due diligence. They do research on their financials. They have the company put together a whole plethora of information on their financials, all of their financial information, security information, infrastructure information. You hand over a lot of information during that acquisition process. And in theory, the company being purchased should be doing their due diligence on the PE firm as well to make sure that they're in good hands. But that process, that doesn't take care of everything. Some things are going to slip through the cracks. And I think what probably happened here is once this deal went through, or was at the very end stages of getting through, because it hasn't actually, seems like there's still filings that need to go public, something happened. They got in here. They saw that this was much more of a disaster than they realized, right? That this company probably, something else was going on under the hood. This thing was a lot less complete. There was a lot more things that were either not purchased or licensed incorrectly, or who knows what was going on in the background. But they got in here and they realized there is no way we can turn a profit just by cutting the employees. It seems like there's no way we can turn a profit at all. We're going to have to scrap this thing for parts. That's what it looks like happened. Because if you're doing a total studio layoff, the only thing you can do at this point to try to make your money back is to try to piece this out and sell the individual pieces. Because again, rehiring this is going to put them a decade back into development again, right at the beginning. And that's not what a PE firm does. They want to try to make their money quickly, or in this case, probably minimize their losses. So moving on, Kira also reports the claim we've heard circulating that workers are not being paid for payroll, PTO, bonuses, or severance benefits, something our sources are telling us as well. We reached out to Intrepid for comment over the weekend and are following up this morning. They're not going to get a response from Intrepid. If they get a response, it's going to be generic investor relations response from the PE firm, because Intrepid doesn't have our staff to respond anymore, I would assume, right? There's no one manning that board. So not being paid for payroll, PTO, and bonuses, or severance benefits. Now we're into legal territory. This is something for the LawTube circles to comment on. But you need to pay payroll and you need to pay PTO. Those are not just corporate things. Those are legal things, right? So if they're not paying payroll and PTO, severance benefits, we'll see. If that's part of your agreement, then yes, you need to pay it. A lot of times that's not actually included in your, in what you signed on with. That's kind of a nice thing that happens after the fact. So that may not be required. Bonuses, probably not required. Payroll and PTO, those are protected by law, generally speaking. So if those aren't getting paid out, that's other problems. That's other problems. That's other problems for the PE firm. This is surprising to me because as scummy as PE firms can be, because this is surprising to me because for a PE firm to not be paying out payroll or PTO, either things got crossed, right? They're in the middle of an acquisition phase, so there's a lot up in the air. This may just be something that's sorted out shortly. they don't want to end up in legal trouble as well as all of the additional trouble they already got themselves into by buying a company that they had to completely shut down and lay everyone off of, right? That's just another thing they do not want to have to deal with. Private equity firms are usually really, really good at this kind of thing. It's their job to be on top of documentation and legal stuff and logistics and paperwork and stuff. It's kind of like 90% of their job. And so the last thing they want to do is end up in legal hot water with a lawsuit as well when they're in the midst of an acquisition and everything. So I don't know. We'll see if this is actually true, if this is just something that's happening with kind of the gray area where they're in right now, or if maybe there will be legal issues coming out of this in the future. So they're going to say they're working to corroborate some of the other claims made in Kier's video, as well as the rumors swirling Reddit, including who the board truly is, right? So who bought out Ashes of Creation? That's the big mystery right now. How far in advance this decision was made, and much more. We've spent a list of questions and requests for comment from Intrepid Studios relating to this report, as well as our reporting over the weekend, although I doubt we'll receive a response since the people who would normally monitor PR email are likely laid off, but we'll keep trying. As of this writing, Intrepid has not made any public comment on this anywhere, including what it means for the MMO servers and when we can expect them to be shut down. As for now, Ashes of Creation is not available for purchase, but the servers are still accessible and in-game shop, apparently. They'll probably shut down when the next thing crashes and no one's there to restart them. If the studio is completely gone and there is no one doing this stuff, effectively, it's a corpse at this point, right? You may be in the servers, but they're there until they're shut down, or until the PE firm turns off everything and starts literally selling the server racks that they're hosted on, assuming they're not on AWS or or GCP or something, Amazon or Google Cloud. So interesting to see what's going on here. This is very much a developing story. Really, really curious to see if this was in fact a total studio layoff. What caused it? I don't think we'll ever really know what caused it. We will probably get Steven's side of the story, because Steven will be very outspoken once all this process is done. Although, he does say there is a legal process going on here. Very possible that if the PE firm bought this, right, they bought this assuming they could turn a profit. They did not buy a company assuming they would have to strip it for parts and lose money on it. So if the PE firm got in here and they saw that something was really bad and it turned into a total studio layoff, it's very possible that he is in the middle of a lawsuit, right, for misrepresenting things from Ashes of Creation. That is also possible. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it's a possibility, right? If the PE firm wants to try to recoup losses and they're saying we were misled, that's what's led us into this. That's also something they might have to do, simply to talk to their shareholders and say, look, we didn't make this bad deal. We were misled on this bad deal. Again, it doesn't look good on them either way, right? Because they failed on their due diligence, effectively, knowing that they had to do this total studio layoff. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see. Really curious to see what the private equity company was that bought Ashes of Creation, what the plan originally was, what Steven said, and if the PE firm comes out and issues a statement as well. Be interested to see that. I know several other YouTubers have reacted to this, as well as Kira TV. Josh Stripe did a video. Asmongold has obviously done several that I'm looking to, maybe I'll do reactions to some of them after this, but this is kind of the initial article that I wanted to react to. This is what broke over the weekend. So we'll be doing more reactions to this soon, hopefully. If that's interesting, like the video, stick around, subscribe so we can follow along when we do the next few of these videos. And if you like this, follow along with the channel, because there will be more coming real soon.